Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to have a little talk about winter carp fishing. We're on the 18th of September at the minute, and to be fair, the weather is turning. We're not right in winter yet, but after the crucial hot summer that we had, it was hot, wasn't it? We're definitely feeling the change in the weather now. Getting a bit more rain, colder mornings, colder evenings, a lot more darker than it has been. So I thought it'd be a good time to have a little chat about a few things to do with winter carp fishing, which hopefully might help you guys get a bit more prepared for the winter and hopefully put a few fish on the bank for you. Because I know a lot of people will just pack up their stuff and hide away for the winter, which I can understand. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But there is still lots of fun to have out here, lots of carp to catch throughout the whole winter. And hopefully this will prepare some of you for it if that's what you're up for this year. So first of all, what I want to touch on is location. Location is absolutely everything. All year round, I understand this. We must find the fish, get on the fish, look for good spots, regular feeding areas. Obviously, location is it all year round. If the fish aren't there, how can we catch? But in winter time, I think it's even more crucial than ever before. You know, in the summertime, if you make a mistake with your location, they're very active, they're moving around. There is a good chance they're still going to come across your bait. And, we'll talk about baiting later on because that is a key factor of this as well. But, if you're putting a lot of bait through the summer, they will find you quicker. And that's not really the case come winter time. So location is absolutely everything. It's serious key. So do they prefer the shallows? Do they prefer the deeper water? Are big lakes better than small lakes? This is something we need to look into. Now, I think you find it is a fact that carp will generally head to the deeper water as the winter comes in and the months get colder and colder. Why is this? Just because the temperatures are more regulated there. Some people will say they'll travel to the shallower water because that heats up quicker. I can understand that. On them warm days, we still get some warm days through the winter and the sun still cracks through sometimes. And yet they might head down there. They might head down to them shallows at some point to try and get a little bit of sun. But, my personal view on this is 90% of the time, I think you're going to find them in the deeper water of the lake. Now, I'm not going to tell you to go out and find the deepest lake around because they're not always the easiest waters. But, if you've got a lake, which let's just say it's got a few deep spots in it. Today we're at Burson Lake, and the main body of the lake is generally flat. I believe around sort of 9 foot. This is the main deepest part of the water as we get out there. Obviously shallow in the margins here. As we travel down to D section, it's seriously shallow in some parts of that. And you've seen how well we can do down there in the summertime, and they love it down there. Already over the last 2 months, we've noticed them moving right out of there and not visiting that place as much. C section is another shallow area of this lake, and I've got some real shallow spots over there. They are still venturing in there on the warm days, but I've seen a much bigger increase in the fish being caught on the main body of the lake now. And obviously, as the winter kicks in more and more, this is where my money will be on the fish coming out. Just the fact that the temperature is more regulated in the water in these places. It's not jumping up and down so much, getting cut by the wind or, changed all the time. So yeah, my general views on it is, if you've got a lake with multiple depths, you're probably going to find them in the deeper areas and held up a lot more. And this brings me to another point, location is so important in the winter times because the simple fact is they just don't move as much. They're very prone to huddling together, sitting up in large groups, sitting around and not really moving a hell of a lot. Everything slows down for the winter time for carp. The whole metabolism really drops down a hell of a lot. And I guess what they're going to waste their so precious energy on at this time of year, it certainly isn't nipping around the lake just to try and find your bait. So you do need to be on them fish to be able to catch them. If we think about it realistically, if a lot of the fish huddle together in one place, then you could be looking at maybe 80% of your lake to 90% of your lake being completely empty of fish. or carp at least, because if they're all huddled together in one area, maybe in a group or two, but say for example, if they all huddle together over at that island over there, that's a hell of a lot of water on this 70-acre lake, which hasn't got any carp moving around in as such. Yes, they do still move in the winter time. Yes, they still will swim about, obviously, but nowhere near as much as they do in the summertime. It is so much less. It's unbelievable. So that's something we really, really got to pay in mind. You know, they don't move as much. They don't move as much. They tend to huddle together a lot in large groups. So if we're not one of them, we could just be fishing, which is practically an empty piece of water. Not good when it's cold. Which brings me on to another one of the topics that I really wanted to cover today. Even though I've pointed out the fact that a deep body of water on your lake will probably hold the carp better than a shallower point of water because they're not wanting to move. It's also been recognised by a lot of people nowadays that a small body of water, which isn't incredibly deep, will often have very good winter form. Why is this? Because they heat up quicker in the morning sun. The temperatures do change a lot in them, which can put the carp on and off of feeding. But with a smaller body of water, with a good, healthy head of fish, you're more likely to probably get a bite than if you're fishing, say, 70 to 100-acre pit with not as many fish in. So this is something to bear in mind. Like I keep saying, location, location, location. Let's get on the water where we know it's got good water form. Maybe not choose like the biggest lake of all. Let's find the smaller the lake, the easier it's going to be for you to get on them. And this brings me to another thing. Choose your winter campaign to your style of fishing. If you've only been fishing maybe for a few months or even a year or two, maybe signing yourself off to a seriously hard winter campaign might not be for you. This could really kill your winter fishing and put you off of doing it anymore. So choose wisely. Choose with lakes where maybe you can nip in for a day or two here and there, or a quick overnight, or even a day session. A small water with a good head of fish will still bring you good bites through the winter time and absolutely great fun and keep you happy through that time. So that's something to think about. Although big lakes are not to be completely ignored, and especially, if you've been fishing for a fair amount of time or if you're just looking for that bit of a harder challenge, they can offer definitely a good challenge in the winter time. And if you can get on them fish, you can still have them by the numbers. So that's the way to look at where are you in your fishing to what you want to bring out in the winter time. You know, if you've been having a nice easy run through the summertime and that's your style of fishing, whether you've been fishing for a month or you've been fishing for 5 years, if getting out, getting a bite, getting as many bites as you can is your style of fishing, and certainly come winter time, I don't think you want to be on a big pit. A nice small lake with a heavy stock on will continue to feed you the fish like it has been through the summertime. Something to bear in mind. But as I say, some people are up for more of a challenge, and then obviously the bigger waters will definitely provide that for you. There's probably a lot more I can say about location, and as I go through the day talking about other things about winter fishing, there will probably spring to my mind, and I'll definitely bring them up. Location and watercraft come hand in hand. It's part of the watercraft location, but watercraft all year round. Again, like I keep saying, it's a major thing that you've got to be playing it all year round. It's not some secret skill. It's just watching and listening and using your eyes and your ears to the maximum ability that you can. That's what will catch you more fish at the end of the day. So watercraft in the winter time is absolutely everything. You know, be out here staring at the water, just looking for them little tiny shows. They're a lot harder to see with the constant wind that we get through the winter, or the rain. Obviously, a lot of movement in the water makes it harder to see them little tiny shows. And if you're not constantly looking at the water, then you're generally going to miss them. Like your ears are a massive weapon as well, because there's so many more hours of darkness through the winter time. Our eyes can only help us so much. So at the end of it all, our ears are a massive key. Listening out all the time for them little splashes or them little poshes, working out where they are, moving onto them is a massive weapon that you need in your arsenal. You know, in this day and age, you know, everybody loves staring at their mobile phones and going on social media, you know, checking your messages, doing stuff like that when fishing's a little bit slow. I'm just the same. I'm no different. But come winter time, when the hours of light are so less than the hours of dark, maybe save that for the evening time when you can't necessarily see so well across the lake. Spend the daytime staring at the water, looking for fish, trying to work things out. And then when the hours of darkness come in and your ears are your best weapon, then maybe it's time that you can have a little look at your phone, sort out your messages and things like that. Don't waste time. Time is everything and light is everything in the winter time. So yeah, be prepared for that. Which brings me to another topic, be prepared. Don't come down unprepared, you know, make sure you've got the stuff that you need for winter time. Good winter kit is everything. I often say in the summer, I don't think there's before you to be prepared in the summertime, don't get sports, don't get it's just the same for the winter time, guys. You've got to be ready for this. Otherwise, you know, your first trip could definitely be your last trip. So what sort of kit am I talking about? Well, you know, you definitely don't want to be down here in the freezing winter in your shorts and t-shirt. Not unless you're crazy like me. No, jokes aside, get yourself some seriously warm clothes, some good boots on your feet, whether with their like wellies with some thermal layering. I don't suggest just normal wellies. You know, normal wellies, you'll get freezing feet. You know, even with 2 or 3 pairs of socks on, your feet are still getting cold. So, you know, some decent boots with some thermal inlays, and I've got some welly type boots which actually have a whole insert inside them, which just makes them like a slipper. I mean, they're beautiful and warm. I've also used some decent walking boots and that as well. You know, some really nice thermal inlays and some really decent thick socks, decent trousers, again, thermal inlaying or long johns and thermal tops and things like that are seriously important this time of year. But, you know, a good bivvy, you need a good bivvy. You need someone to shelter away from, even if you're not staying the night, you know, a good day shelter to get you out of the wind, or a good brolly, you know, get you out of the wind, get you out of the rain. Shelter is key. If you stay in the night, get yourself a nice comfy bed. A good sleep system, you know, a real big, decent sleeping bag that's going to keep you, you know, nice and toasty. Maybe the little thin blankets that you might have been using through the summertime because you've been so hot, they just won't do. You need to make sure you've got the right kit down here. I've got, I'll show you an image of it up here, but I've got a Trekker suit, like, you know, I'm not sponsored by Trekker, or nor did I get any discount or anything like that on it. And it's, I just went to Anchor Direct to bought myself. They changed their range quite a lot, so if you wait, you can get some of them quite good deals. I got mine seriously reduced because the new version's come out. I think they've actually re-released my style one now. But anyway, I put that suit on. I'm not feeling a thing. That is super padded, super warm, super waterproof. Really, really good bit of kit. And that is the difference between being able to hold it out here and just wanting to go home and not wanting to come back. So that is a massive thing. Kit is a big thing. You know? Warm clothes, a shelter, a nice bed to get in with a good sleep system, a big fat sleeping bag, something like that. A good winter suit of some sort. People like the boiler suits and things like that. Personally, I prefer the bib and brace with the coat. Some people just prefer the trousers. Whatever makes comfortable for you. And this is the big thing in the winter time, comfortable. You've got to be comfortable. When you get uncomfortable, start getting cold and wet and miserable, that's it. You ain't coming back. So we must think about that. Food and drink. This plays a major part in fishing as well, keeping our energy, and again, a good source to keep us warm. You know, everybody likes having a little beer down the lake sometimes, or, you know, your bottles of fizzy and your cold water. I drink so much water, it's unbelievable. But when we're stepping into the winter time, you know, a nice warm drink like, you know, tea, coffee, hot chocolate, things like that, they really, really help. I like to have, you know, a nice little cup of soup sometimes that fills you up a little bit. Just the hot drinks and the hot food, you know, good hot food will definitely help you out and keep you going down here through the cold nights. So that's definitely something that you need to really think about. You know, maybe just a packed lunch with Dasanis ain't quite good enough. You want a bit of hot grub inside you and a nice warm drink. So I think we covered there a lot about location and being sort of prepared with your kit and watching the water. I mean, I wouldn't suggest just going down there and throwing your stuff down and just get set straight up, you know. Use your watercraft, have a walk of the lake, have a good scan around, you know. A set of binoculars is key as well, you know, it's a great bit of kit to have. You scan over the water, especially if you're fishing a big water. Try and find the fish, get in a swim where there's some activity. Once you've got the right swim, location's good, tick that off. Then we get our kit set up. And as I say, you know, good warm clothing, a nice dry shelter, warm food, warm drink will do you seriously well down here. So, another thing to think about in the winter time is fishing for liners. You know, when bites come so far in between and the fish are huddled up together, we know we're in the right swim, we've seen some action, but are we actually dead on them? This is where this comes in. Another big This is where fish for liners really comes in handy and really plays its part. So normally I try and slack my lines down as much as possible and try and get them nicely across the bottom of the lake to try and stop getting too many liners or stop the bird life that are taking me out all the time. But come winter time, it does help out to just to fish them lines that little bit more tight, just a little bit more up in the water. And when the fish come through, you know, we're going to get liners. That's going to tell us pretty much where the fish are compared to our bait. And if you've not really fished with liners before or anything like that, I'll give you a little example now. So if it takes it right in front of my rod there, it's going to be quite an aggressive take. It's probably going to come right the way up to the top of the rod and probably drop right the way back down to where it started. Where if it's a bit further out, like say closer to the rig, then it's going to be a lot slower. Maybe just a little take like that, and then you know you're in the right sort of place. But if you're getting a lot of them sort of fast takes up and down, if it's a really aggressive take, then the fish are definitely closer to you than they are your actual rig. So at that point, I would bring my stuff in, recast a lot closer, and hopefully be on top of the fish. I would keep on repeating this pattern until I felt like I was dead on top of them, and happy that I'm fishing accurately for the fish. But it's a really good key just to try and nail them down that little bit more. As I say, fish activity and movement and bites are a lot less come the winter time, but it's not like they don't come at all. So something to think about. Which makes me think about another thing. You know, I'm saying about I'd recast and I'd put them back out. Well, this brings me to another good point. That will just not do in winter time. There is no that is good enough or oh that'll do, never mind. You know, the fish aren't moving enough. 3 foot, 2 foot, it could be may as well be 5 miles in the winter time. You need to be on them. If you think you've worked out the spot where they are, then be prepared, recast, redo it. You know, get that on the spot where you think they are. Otherwise, you may as well be 5 miles away from it, as far as I'm concerned. Accuracy and persistence is everything. You know, like I keep on saying, they're not moving around as much. So if you're not on top of them, they ain't going to eat your stuff, basically. Let's have a little talk about bait and baiting strategies and stuff like that for the winter time, because that is definitely something that changes drastically. Anybody that knows me or has fished with me or near me will know I have no problem with throwing bait in the water. I absolutely love putting a good bit of bait in. I very much enjoy spodding. And I have no hassle with feeding the fish for free. However, come winter time, this definitely does change. The spod rod comes out less and less as the year gets on, to some points not even at all. There's occasions where spodding is still a good idea, but a hell of a lot less than I would in the summertime, and I definitely wouldn't just bring it out on every trip, and I definitely just wouldn't be pounding the lake with it straight off the go. That's just not happening. So when would spotting be acceptable? Well, I guess it's a good thing to think about now. So if I turn up to the lake and I've got everything set up, in the right swim, location is perfect. I found them on top of the fish. Maybe I've even already had one or two, so I know they're there. Then I might be thinking to myself, well, I could just put a little bit of bait over the top of them to try and hold the pack up from there. So whilst I'm catching them, I'm not spooking the rest of them off too much. So by doing that, it literally would be just a few spawns. You know, by a few spawns, I am talking literally 3, 4 at the max. Just to keep the area going. I may continue this like several times through the night or day, depending when I'm fishing. But it certainly wouldn't be as often as normal. I certainly wouldn't be emptying buckets into the lake, and I certainly wouldn't be pounding the hell out of it every hour. A lot less bait if I either decide to put it in. Next, I would talk about what we're going to put in the spot mix. A lot different to the summertime, obviously. We want to drop out all the oils really, except for hemp oils, and no fishy oils, no like really greasy pellets or oily pellets. We don't want none of that in there, like, you know, no halibut, no krill. I generally drop all of that out completely. Hemp and hemp oil is absolutely fantastic all year round, and in the winter time I'd probably ditch all the boilies out of it as well, just because I don't want to fill the fish up too much. And I do still put some boilies in, but I'll get to that in a bit. So no boilies in the spot mix. Hemp, sweet corn, maybe a little bit of maize. But hemp and corn are absolutely fantastic baits all year round. It's a super attractor. They can digest the hemp and the hemp oil fantastically through the winter time. And sweet corn, absolutely everything loves it. So it brings the party alive. And it's also, you know, a really good food for them, which doesn't bulk them up too much, doesn't fill their stomachs up too much, so you're not bloating them out. For any of you that use breadcrumbs, stuff like that, it's probably a good time to start steering away from that now as well, because that can bulk, that can bloat them out quite a lot as well. It's quite a filling sort of feed. So if you're thinking about something that usually fills the fish up and stuff like that, we want to get away from that. They do still want a bit of protein in the winter, but nowhere near as much as they did in the summertime. So probably a really good time to start steering up for some of that a bit as well. Just a really light small spot mix, a couple of little spots out there at a time, you know, 2 or 3 spots, maybe 4 at the maximum. And then, like, you know, just to try and hold them in the air or keep that area livened up a bit. Very little and not constant. That's the rule for spotting in the winter time for me. And as I say, yeah, just take the mix right the way down. I lose a lot. I put quite a lot of stuff in my mix in the summertime. Yeah, it's stripped right down. So I would say, like, you know, a good basis would probably be like hemp at sweet corn is a really good base. If you want to use any pellet and stuff like that, I'd go right away from the oily trout pellets, you know, krill pellets. I'd get away from sort of like halibut pellets, stuff like that. High oil contained pellets. Steer right away from maybe just dry fish meal pellets with no oil on. They can still be good. They break down quite well in the water and add a nice attractor to it. But just real little, not much at all, guys. You know, just real small amounts of bait in there. Oily fishing, like I still like doing a lot of that through the winter time, big time. But I'm not going to stand here with a catapult or the spot and be putting out kilos of it. It's just not happening. It's just one, it's a waste of bait. Two, a lot of it's just going to rot on the bottom of the lake. And three, yeah, you're just going to fill the fish up. They do start munching away on that. The chances of them coming across your hook bait before the stomachs are filled up is unlikely in my eyes. But this is all just my views, obviously, and things that I found out through my own fishing. Either getting like a small amount of stocking and maybe 3 or 4 buoys in the stocking, or a stringer which you could wrap around your hook bait, or even just a stringer just coming off, you know, a bit of PVA tape or string. That's a fantastic way of doing it. Just gets a few buoys out there around your rig, which is a really nice way to present it. A nice little mouthful or two for the fish. Not going to fill their stomachs up, not going to bloat them out and put them off of eating anymore. And what else you got to remember, you know, if you're not really feeling like eating yourself, and when you turn up and there's this massive, great big banquet of food, oh, you might think, I don't really fancy that today, or you'll probably steer away from it. But, you know, if you're a little bit peckish and you come along this lovely little small treat, you think, well, that's a nice little mouthful, you might just take it. And in my eyes, that's how it is for the carp. So a little roundup for the baiting strategy there, you know, basically baiting strategy is very small, very tight. You know, I don't want to be spreading. I'm very fond of putting a large amount of bait out in a line and then just putting 3 rods on top of it. It's certainly not that, you know, it's more accurate, direct areas around your rig, a very small amount, concentrated. Well, I should hope that if you've got all the first keys right of location and watching the water and fishing for liners, by this time, when you come to put the bait in, you're going to be dead on top of the fish. Yeah, so concentrated, not spread out. Accuracy is key at winter time. So baiting concentrating is very important. We've covered losing a lot of the stuff out of your spod mix, no oily pellets, not too much boilies. And we've covered the fact that hemp and hemp oil and sweet corn are absolutely killer in the winter time. You know, let's not forget about their naturals as well. A lot of people do absolutely fantastic using naturals such as maggots, casters, worms. These things really pay their own sort of due in this time of year. So, they're killer all year round. But, this time of year for the carp, they just seem to be absolutely key. So don't forget about them. So that's sort of baiting strategy and some techniques done, using the stringers and stuff like that for the boys. If you've got to use boilies, single pop-ups work really well. You're casting at a showing fish with a single pop-up, just that little mouthful for them to snatch can be a real killer. You know, also as well, you'll find a lot of the fish are sitting in the middle layers and stuff like that. They don't all necessarily hog up on the bottom like everyone thinks. They sit in these layers in the deeper water, in deep water. They can sit in the middle layers there. So don't forget about sigs. People think that sigs are just a daytime summer thing. They're not. Night and day, all year round, they will work fantastic. So a good sig at the right level, absolutely fantastic. Maybe try out one of the adjustables. They work very, very well. Really fun to use. So yeah, so never dismiss the sigs. They do work all year and night and day. Unlike what a lot of people sort of think, it's just a summer daytime thing. No, not at all. Not at all. So that's baiting and baiting strategy pretty much covered for now, I think. If anything else springs to mind, I'll bring it up and we can backtrack on that. So we've covered quite a few bits today to do with location, watching the water, baiting strategies and bait and a lot of stuff like that. But another really good baiting strategy that I find come the winter time is solid PVA bags. Now, I'm not talking about getting the ginormous, massive, huge ones and trying to pump as much as you can into the lake. No, you're still sticking with the key feature, which is small and not too much, So it's small items in a very small bag, Maybe we're going to go for mostly powder, maybe some liquids in there, and just lots and lots of attractions with some very small food items. So we could, with the very small food items, maybe we could put some like crumbled up bits of boilie in there, or some really small micro pellets. Remember, not oily ones though, just completely plain, maybe just fish meal. They would be great. And as for hook bait, maybe we'd use just a very small pop up or some fake corn, something like that, something very small, very light, gonna get a reaction straight out of it. Pretty much standard PVA bag fishing rules. But for that time of year, I'd definitely only be focusing on the very small PVA bags. Something around this sort of size, and it's just a nice mouthful of food for them to come up and take. I mean, we often think they're going to take all of that in one mouthful, just a mouthful, but they don't. I've seen them underwater, and sometimes you can take them a couple of times to come back and get that. I'd suggest maybe a lot of boilie crumb in there, some liquid attractors, and stuff like that. A little tip for your PVO bags is I wouldn't use ground bait if I was you. I've seen it on the underwater before and stuff like that, and it can get very dodgy and firm, and it just doesn't really sort of break up or come apart quite as well. Is some of the other things. I mean, a bit of crushed hemp in there is fantastic. You can get some like maybe boilie crumbs, some crushed hemp in there and things like that, because that will really help it to help the bag to sort of explode and bring out the real traction of it and stuff like that. And that is one of the major things we want at this time of year, or leading into the winter time and all the way through the winter time. As the winter gets colder, obviously it's going to get harder, and we have to put these tactics more and more in. But by this time, if we do the hard work early in the beginning of the winter, we can generally find out where they're going to be and stay on them throughout the winter and keeping our catch rate, reasonably steady. But yeah, PPA is going to be a great weapon for you in the winter time. As we've touched on, PPA tape, PPA string for doing like stringers, the Bermuda triangle. You can use string or you can use the tape for that. It's absolutely easy. PPA stocking, maybe just to put a few boilies in. You can make a nice stick mix up, maybe with some boilie crumb, bit of liquid, some hemp and stuff like that, that could go into a stocking quite nice. PVA, if you're not using it in your fishing yet, get on it, start using it, start practicing, because it is an absolutely fantastic weapon all year round. But used correctly can be your best friend in winter time. Although we do have to remember it's PVA and it melts in the water, obviously. I like to pre-prepare a lot of mine. I'll pre-prepare my solid bags, my stockings, absolutely everything. I'll make a load up at home before going. Or if you've got the bivvy, it's a lot easier to do it inside your bivvy. You know, we don't want to get wet and damp. If you are going to pre-prepare and make sure you've got a nice airtight container so that no moisture's getting there or dampness. Got to look after these things once we've made them. If you're going to pre-make your PVA stocking, always test them, because if you're going to oil them up or put any sort of juice on them before bringing them to the lake, just check how well they break down and how quick they break down. Sometimes it can really slow down the melting rate of the PVA. And if this happens, obviously in the winter time, everything melts a little bit slower in the water anyway when the water's cold. So we can get fast melting PVA, solid bags, and slow melting ones for different times of the year. I've touched on that before in some of the other videos, but just make sure you're getting the right stuff. If you're unsure, test it or ask in the shops or where you're buying it from. There's always some good information to be had there. If you're using stocking and stuff like, you can literally, just test one in the sides of the lake there. It'll give you a good time comparison to how long it takes for it to break down and things like that. Touched on the fact that obviously in the winter time that the hours of light are a lot less than the hours of dark. Or that's obvious. What might not be as obvious to everybody is that you will see a lot more fish action in the darker hours, because there's more hours of darkness than there is light. I do definitely find myself on a lot of lakes, they just seem to move around a lot more, feed a lot more, and maybe even show yourself a lot more on this hours of darkness. Now, I would suggest, just like any other time of year, your best time to get down here is first thing in the morning. You know, if you can get here before it gets light, so you're just seeing that fish like that's when you've got a good chance, maybe even the only chance of seeing fish move in the light come the dark. Fish actually move out of the water and jump about is in the first hour of light, and maybe in, as I was saying, maybe that first hour and the last hour of light, it'll be the best time for you to actually see the fish moving, and they could be completely quiet all day long. So it's very important to be out. If you're already here, be out at the be having a look, keep your eyes on the water at them times. As I've already said in this video, watercraft is absolutely everything. Watercraft location is everything this time of year. Rigs, go-to rigs for the winter time. Well, I guess there could be a few, but what my best suggestion would be for you is use the rig you're comfortable with. This might not be the best time really to be sort of jumping around, trying new things, the next best thing on the market or the new gimmick that everybody's having a go at. Winter time is not the time for be doing that, I don't think personally. You want a rig that you're 100% confident in, that you've caught plenty of fish off before, and you 100% know in your heart that that is going to get you fish. You don't want to be sat here in the winter time when it can be a lot longer waiting in between fish, wondering whether that rig actually works or not, and maybe missing the only bite that you might have on that trip. That wouldn't be good. So a rig that we're confident in, a rig that we've used plenty of times before and caught fish, that's the one that you want to be using. Another good one to turn, another good thing to look at is, for instance, this is quite a heavy bushed up area with trees overhanging the lake and all sorts. There's a bit of weed that grows in this part of the lake, and there's definitely lots of stuff that fall in the lake, which means the bottom of this lake is very choddy, which means, yep, the chod rig will work absolutely fantastic here, which you will find in most places in the winter around the lake. You're going to get a lot of stuff that drops in, and as the wind blows, it moves it about, causing there to be a lot of debris and rubbish on the bottom of the lake, from the bushes and the trees and stuff like that. So a decent chod rig sat over the top of that could win you that fight, where maybe some other rigs might just get a little bit lost in the rubbish. That's another good thing to think about. Also, downsizing some of your stuff. If through the summer you've been increasing your hook sizes, and some people just use one hook size all year. If in the summer you've been upping your hook size a bit, and stuff like that. Maybe this is the time just to wind it back down a little bit, get on them smaller hooks. With the fish moving a lot less, the bites are going to be a lot more finicky. They're, they're not so much motoring around grabbing your rigs or grabbing the bait, accidentally snatching you if you're not realised until they moved on. They're a lot more lethargic. They've got to be sat around just sort of munching up a bit, and it could be a lot more harder to get a bite with a great big hook or some of the stuff that we've been using through the summertime, where they're a lot more careless. And another thing I'd like to touch on, like, it's weather. Everyone just thinks it's always going to be awful in the winter time. Well, yeah, we do get a lot of worse weather in the winter, but we also do get some reasonable stuff. So just because it's winter doesn't mean the weather's always going to be absolutely dreadful. So keeping an eye on the weather and having a few decent weather apps to use will be a great hand in the winter time. You don't really want to be rocking up on the lake for your 3-day trip and getting absolutely soaked to the bone before you even start, all the kit drenched beds and that. It's just not good. It's not a good start to any trip, especially one in the cold winter. So you need to look at the apps. You need to plan when you're going to go fishing, plan for the best weather as best as you can, but also, plan when you're getting here, plan when you're leaving here. So looking at a decent weather app, you can time the rain and the wind and stuff like that to when you're going to be arriving in the swim, to when you're going to be moving out of the swim. Now, whether that's a factor, whether if you stop yourself getting soaked when you're setting up, or soaked when you're packing up, or working out wind direction coming onto the lake and things like that. These things are majorly important. What I do now is I've got a few apps that I use myself. Unifish is one of them. I like to check the Net Office. There's a few others that I use. I'll pop a few of the names of the apps that I like to use on the screen now. Checking different weather apps, comparing different readings and stuff like that to give you a good readout of when to get here, and also picking the time to leave. One of the apps I like to use is Unifish, and that will actually give you a little reading of which direction the wind's coming in, when you're expecting the rain and stuff like that. I also use a radar app, which also gives me quite good bearings of when I'm expecting the rain, when I'm expecting it to end, which are time sort of prime time arrival and exit from a swim to do that. Also, from planning on a move and swim, I don't want to get halfway packing down my stuff to shift to another swim, get absolutely soaked along the way. So it's very important to sort of keep an eye on the weather this time of year, much more than it is the summer, I think. I mean, if you get hit by a shower or a bit of rain in the summer, you're generally going to dry out and warm up, and sometimes it's even quite refreshing. But, if you're out here in serious cold conditions and you get soaked, then no, it's no joke. So that can be a big bonus and keep you on the bank. And all these things are just to try and make you more comfortable, because comfortability is everything. If you're comfortable, then you'll be enjoying the trip. If you're enjoying the trip, confidence will grow. But confidence is everything. If I don't feel confident, if I'm not comfortable, then I'm just not really wanting to be here or wanting to fish. And you may as well not even be doing it at that point. Pack up, go home. you know. So if we can get all these factors ticked off before we even start, and that will seriously help you out. Have a good trip, enjoy yourself, and hopefully get some decent fish on the bank, and you'll want to come back and have a good winter campaign, hopefully. So I think that pretty much rounds it up, of what we spoke about today. We've touched on quite a few good things. So keeping warm, getting on the fish, choosing location, timing your baiting, keeping the bait quite small, not too much of it, rigs that we feel confident in, warm dry clothes, warm dry bed, warm food, keeping an eye on the weather and the weather apps. This is stuff which will really, really help you fish forward with your winter fishing and hopefully give you a really good time. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers that section for today. If there's anything that you like to do for your winter fishing, drop it in the comments. Let's see what you guys do for yours. I mean, I'm no master at this. I'm just trying to tell you a few things that have made it more comfortable for me. Let's see what ideas you've got. I do, but I know a lot of people take hot water bottles out with them and stuff like that. But yeah, if there's any ideas that you've got or anything that you find really helps you out in the winter time to stay warm and comfortable on the bank, or any tactics that help you catch them fish and get them on the bank with you, let's see it in the comments. Let's have a little chat and discussion about it, guys. I'd love to hear some more ideas of what you guys do. We can all share it together. Let's have a good winter.